Okay, this is a quick review on mixed numbers going into an improper fraction. So, looking at 11D number 9, you have this mixed number. It's called a mixed number because you have a big number and a fraction. It is a mixture of a whole number and a fraction. That's why it's called a mixed number. And it can be changed into an improper fraction. How do you do that? I'll have to say you go around the circle. One of my students likes to say Texas popcorn. You do this. This is multiplied. This is added. But you see how it looks like T and X. So Texas, and that's a piece of popcorn. And so you go around that way. You say 8 times 1 is 8. And then 8 plus 5, 13. And so therefore that would be the same as 13 eighths. The denominator is always the same. So 1 5/8 is the same thing as 13 eighths. If you took a rectangle and divided it into 8 and you had 13 of those parts, you would actually have more than 8 of those. You can see 8 goes into 13 more than 1. So 8 times 1 plus the 5 gives you your new numerator. The denominator stays the same. Looking at 11D17, Brett ran for 3 2/3 miles. How many thirds of a mile did he run? This is a key word. That tells you they're asking how many thirds. Like in that first one we did, that would be 13 eighths. How many eighths? 13. So we're looking for how many thirds. So it means our denominator is going to be a third. All we have to do is take our 3 2/3 and turn it into an improper fraction. Okay? So again, how do you do that? Well, according to one of my students, Texas popcorn. Multiply, then add. Looks like a piece of popcorn. That's a T and an X. 3 times 3 is 9. 9 plus 2, 11. So your new numerator is 11. And then your denominator always stays the same. My denominator was 3 before, so it will stay the same. And that's 11 thirds. How many thirds? 11 thirds. And then with the word problem, you always need to have a word here to tell you what does that number represent. 11 thirds represents miles. Now let's go backwards and do improper fraction to a mixed number. Okay, so why is this called an improper fraction? Because the numerator is bigger than the denominator. So this answer should look familiar to you because we just did it. So 11D number 11, taking the improper fraction of 11 thirds. Again, improper because the numerator is bigger than the denominator. So as a reminder, what does that symbol mean? It means divide. That is the same thing as saying 11 divided by 3. So you can turn this into a long division problem. You would write it like this: 11 divided by 3. The numerator goes under the house, the denominator goes out in front. So how many times is the most that 3 goes into 11? 3 times. And then multiply 3 times 3, 9. Now subtract 2. So this remainder, that becomes your new numerator, and the number out in front will always be your denominator. Okay? So to write the fraction next to the 3 is your big number, your whole number, and then this becomes your new numerator over that denominator. So 3 2/3 is the same as 11 thirds. And you can go backwards and go through what we just went through to turn it to improper to check yourself. 3 times 3 is 9, plus 2, 11, 11 thirds. Go down to 11D number 18. Rick worked on the lawn for 14 fifths, that's how you say that, 14 fifths hours. How long will Rick say that he worked on the lawn? When we tell people I worked out in the yard, I don't go and tell people I worked in the yard for 14 fifths hours. They don't know what that means. So we're going to change that into a mixed number because that's really how we talk to people. 14 fifths. So we're going to change it to a mixed number with a whole number and a fraction. So that's the same thing as 14 divided by 5. What's the most that 5 goes into 14? 2. So 2 times 5, 10. Now you subtract 4. The remainder becomes your new numerator. So that'd be 2 4 fifths. The one thing to always look for is, can that fraction reduce? 2 4 fifths, but 4 fifths will not reduce. So now I'll tell people, how long did I work in the yard? For 2 hours, 2 4 fifths hours. That tells people how long I worked in the yard. I worked for 2 hours, and then I worked almost a whole nother hour. So that is more meaningful to people, 2 4/5 than 14/5.